This is not a huge part of the weighted average cost of capital material, but I just want to draw your attention to it before I move on. There are different ways of rearranging the weighted average cost of capital information, and one of these ways is to figure out the cost of a firm without debt. And it's not always useful, but in some companies you want to think about just sort of the raw cost of the company, assuming everything is equity financed. And you can do that using this formula, and you can rearrange it into this formula. And they've done it here, Professor Hall has done it, and essentially backed into it. So if you follow the formula using this publicly available information, you can get a cost of equity without debt. And you notice it's about 11.54%, whereas here it's 13%. So it's significantly lower if you fund a company with only equity and no debt. And the idea here is that it's just a little bit less risky. There's no debt payment that's due. We're 100% equity, and so we're capturing all of the upside. It's one of those, it depends on the industry you're in and what you want to do. But the point is that you can rearrange the weighted average cost of capital, and you can end up with the cost of equity without debt using publicly available information like the beta, the credit rating, the cost of equity, and the cost of debt. Also the percent debt to equity. And you can also do the same thing with the betas. So part of an asset's beta comes from equity and part of it comes from debt. So there's some implication that debt would change your asset beta, which makes total sense. The more debt I have, the more risky I probably am as a company, and therefore the more my company's beta is affected by that. And so here's a similar example where they kind of go through that. The implication here is that beta can be decomposed into stuff that's associated with the debt and stuff that's associated with the equity, and also that you can back into a cost of equity for companies that have debt, but assuming that they didn't have debt at all. These are things that you might not do every day. It depends on your job and what's happening in your line of work. But in general, they're things that are not that hard to do given the right time and some calculations using publicly available data.